When it became known to the world that George Lucas was going to make the prequels, fans already had some idea of what to expect. Ben and Anakin's relationship, the Clone Wars, the rise of the Empire, and Leia's early years with her real mother on Alderaan.
She died when I was very young.
What do you remember?
Well, obviously nothing, since Lucas decided to kill her off in the 20 years in between. Now the question was what prompted him to make that decision, creating such a blatant plot hole in the process. When Lucas decided to redirect the original trilogy towards Vader's redemption, he developed the backstory that would later be told in the prequels, though with some changes in the timeline. Unaware of his wife's pregnancy, Anakin is manipulated by the Emperor and falls to the dark side. After defeating him on Mustafar and later learning he survived, Ben tells the news to Padme, who has had the babies in the meantime, and they are now 6 months old. To keep them safe, Ben takes Luke to Tatooine and Padme takes Leia to Alderaan, where they live together until her sudden death a year and a half later. Part of this story did wind up in the novelization of Return of the Jedi, and even made it into the final script, when Ben reveals the identity of Luke's sister. But Lucas decided to cut this out as he always had some issues with Padme's cause of death, though it's clear she survived childbirth in any case. When he set out to write the prequels in 1994, he had to transform that Vader's backstory into a plot, including the role and fate of Leia's mother.
Well, it's Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker, and Mrs. Anakin Skywalker.
Time, however, slowly caught up to Lucas, and he entered pre-production of Episode 3 still without a finished script. This made concept artists speculate on the events surrounding Anakin and Padme, as we see in designs of her attempting to take Vader's life, and even carrying the twins after giving birth. But he finally delivered a rough draft on January 31st, 2003, in which it's vaguely stated that she dies on the operating table, remaining that way in all subsequent scripts. Let us now see why.
And action!
Unlike the original backstory, Anakin now knew that Padme was pregnant, so Lucas structured the film around his obsession for her, making the power to save his wife from certain death the main issue of his downfall.
This is a scene that describes the overall plot, the sort of overriding issue of her death. It's fear of losing somebody he loves, which is the flip side of greed. Greed in terms of the Emperor, it's the greed for power, absolute power over everything.
The shadow of greed.
With Anakin, it's really the power to save the one he loves, but it's basically going against the fates and what is natural.
You fear to lose.
With Padme being the center of the hero's turn, it made sense to Lucas for her not to survive the events of the film, as it enhanced Anakin's overall tragedy. And dying of a broken heart seemed the logical resolution to this, though it may not be the most consistent in terms of character development. For this final appearance, the team took inspiration from Hamlet's Ophelia, who also met a tragic end after her lover's abuses. So by getting her out of the way, Lucas would tie up loose ends regarding her absence in the original trilogy, and it would especially create dramatic irony and a more poetic end to Revenge of the Sith. Anakin falls to the dark side out of desperation to save his wife from dying, but it ends up being the catalyst that kills her. It's a perfect juxtaposition between the birth of Vader and the death of Padme, which makes sense for this one movie, but one that sacrifices Leia's lines along the way.
It's hard to do it on a piece of paper, but once you get the movie in your hands, you can begin to see things and work with them, and eventually they evolve into what feels right for the movie itself. And just as the moment that he's born, she dies. So that, we have that moment where he takes his first breath as Darth Vader, which is the symbol of him coming alive. And then that's followed by the scene of her saying there's still good in him and dying.
The fandom, however, has been trying to find an in-universe explanation for this continuity error, the most evident being Leia's strong connection to the Force.
Through the Force, things you will see, other places, the future, the past, old friends long gone.
This was inherited from the Chosen One to his children, an idea already explored during the pre-production of Episode 3. At some point it featured a pregnant Padme in pain seeking Yoda's help, as she now had more midichlorians than anyone ever had. What Lucas did keep in the script was the fact that she smiles at Leia, presumably the smile she would recall in Episode 6. The 2005 Junior novelization goes further and states that while Luke had his eyes closed, Leia looked at her mother as if she wanted to memorize every detail. In any case, this was never confirmed in George Lucas's canon. But when Disney came into the picture, they focused on making it feel like the real Star Wars, and on fixing plot holes in his legacy.
This will begin to make things right.
They continued Leia's journey from the original trilogy
Her resistance to the mind probe is considerable.
and officially turned her into a powerful Force user, one with an innate ability to sense past events through flashbacks. It's as if they have been racing to explain those infamous lines from the get-go, addressing them in every medium with subtle attention to the concept of feeling.
Just images, really. Feelings.
To name just a few, it's been covered in comic books like Shattered Empire, in which she showed this ability by sensing Darth Maul's presence as seen in The Phantom Menace. In the Princess Leia miniseries, she experiences a Force vision of Padme after seeing an image of her. And in the Star Wars Adventures Annual 2019, Breha Organa tells Leia stories about her in front of her statue, once again mentioning the word feeling. We've also seen this in novels such as The Princess and the Scoundrel, where Leia reflects on having memories she can't describe, having a connection to her real mother through the Force. But the most significant attempt to fix it was in the Kenobi series, where Ben tells Leia he remembers flashes of his own family.
Sometimes I try to imagine what he was like.
I know that feeling. I still have glimpses. Flashes, really.
Just images, really. Feelings.
And in the last part, he describes Padme to her very similarly to how she would later describe her to Luke.
Princess Leia Organa, you are wise, discerning, kind-hearted. These are qualities that came from your mother.
She was very beautiful. Kind, but sad.
Along with what she saw the second after being born,
It's a go.
it's possible those words may have had some resonance in her conscience. As a child, Leia could have experienced a Force vision or a vivid dream of her mother, one which she wasn't being able to sort out. This is actually mentioned in the Return of the Jedi novelization, and would have been, as Qui-Gon would say, the will of the living Force.